So my last Archer guide video was released a few months ago and now it's quite outdated, at least for the newest meta. And I've gotten a few comments asking me how I should be building an Archer class right now. So I'm just going to be making this new video about how you should be building an Archer for early, mid, late, and endgame player for this meta. So this time, instead of working my way from lower or early game towards the endgame Archer builds, I'm going to start off with a maxed out Archer build, and I'm going to slowly work my way downwards to the early game Archer builds. So what is the current maxed Archer build? It's a little bit more complicated than just a simple set of armor with a pair of weapons. Because what you want to have is going to be a mage setup, and it doesn't have to be a maxed one, but just a set of Storm, with Wither Goggles, and a Hyperion. You're going to be using this for room clearing, and yes, it's a very expensive set for room clearing, but it's probably the most efficient one right now. And when you go into the boss room, you're going to switch to your main set, which is going to be a Necron set, maxed out, with 4 or 5 Bone Meringues. For pets, if you have the maxed out mage setup for room clearing, you would want a blue whale pet. And if you don't have a mage setup for room clearing, if you're just using a Necron and Bone Meringues for room clearing, you want to get a Flower of Truth for lifesteal so you don't die, and a Baby Yeti. With Flower of Truth and Baby Yeti, you should be fine for most of the room clearing if you're playing safe, and if you're high catacombs, you should be fine either ways. You can move on to something like an E-Drag if you don't die as much. For boss room, for floor 7, you want to use a Wither Skeleton pet, as this does more DPS to Wither mobs, more than an E-Drag pet. So how do you play this maxed out Archer setup? So what you do is basically simple. You go into a floor 7 or any other floor you're doing. Well, this build is mainly focused around floor 7, but you switch to your mage set, you got your Hyperion, and for room clearing you just basically, well you do this. Well, that's what you do with the Hyperion when room clearing. It's quite obvious, but with the Bone Meringues, I mean, just take a look at this damage for yourself.
Oh, that's a lot of damage!
You can also watch this bonemeringue.exe montage video I made quite a while ago for more Bone Meringue content, but that's just pretty much it for the endgame build for archers. So for the late game Archer build, which is basically the endgame build but without the Hyperion mage to clear the rooms. And what you also can do to save a little bit of money is to reduce your Bone Meringue count to 3, as 4 is probably the most optimal and maybe 5, but 3 works fine as well with a bow. Also what you can do is to get Overload 4 instead of Overload 5, as it's like a 8 mil reduction in price, but you should not skip out on Overload as it's a very good damage booster. So for the mid game archers out there, I would recommend getting a Frag Legendary Shadow Assassin set, which is basically Shadow Assassin set with these marked before their name. You can get this by putting 8 Livid Fragments around your Shadow Assassin piece. As you can see over here, these go for quite a reasonable price, and even a chest plate. For mid game players, spending around 26 mil for or maybe 35 for the whole set shouldn't be that big of a problem. And for the weapon, here's the catch for mid-game players. If you can only afford one bone or something, you shouldn't rush it, as getting a simple bow like a spirit bow, which should be around here. Yeah, getting a simple bow like a spirit bow, it's like 3 to 4 mil, your maxed one, it's not that bad. And you would find yourself using this a lot more than Bone Meringues if you only have like one of them, which is not maxed. If you want to use Bone Meringues, have like at least 3 of them. So you should rush something like a bow and a Yeti pets first before getting Bone Meringues. So for the mid game player that does not want to get the Baby Yeti, as that's probably the expensive pet over here, you can get a Flower of Truth and then on it or Florid Zombie Sword to compensate for your lack of EHP to keep life stealing and healing to not die. You can go with a pet like the Wither Skeleton to do DPS. Now finally for the early game players, you can get 3 False Shadow Assassin, which is like 1 mil, and the helmet's like 2 mil and 3 mil, so it's like 8 or 7 mil for 3/4 SA. And for a chest plate, what you can do is you can get something like a Skeleton Master chest plate, or you can get a Zombie Knight chest plate. They are both equally as good, so pick whichever that suits you, or whichever that you get in the dungeon run might work as well. For the weapons for the early game players, definitely just straight up go with the Spiritual Spirit Bow, get a Fluff War carry for like 50k or something. And this will cost about 4 mil, which is definitely the most money to efficiency profit bow you can get as an early game archer. And even when I say early game, it still costs like a 40 mil setup with a Wither Skeleton pad too. So if you're anywhere below that, I honestly do not recommend you going archer set. It's not very good without a expensive setup. Just go as a Berserker with a lifesteal weapon or something. So that's it for all the stages of the game archer setup guide. I shouldn't have missed anything too major, but if I did, please leave down in the comments. If you have a question, just ask it to me. My Discord will be in the description, so you can ask me there if you wish to. Hope this helped. Thanks for watching.